Michael Kaskey Blomain's with us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Sports Bash. Today is a day to try something a little different, a little ordinary. Watch live sports on your phone and bet on the game you're watching. Korean baseball, soccer in Belarus, professional darts, table tennis. You might be surprised at how much you enjoy watching the game and betting on the game at PlaySugarHouse.com. Go to the sportsbook and click streaming live to see what's on. Try something new today. Have a little fun. You ever sit there, like, this is pretty crazy. I have the Play Sugar House app. I use that. Watching darts, just wow.
It's unbelievable. I mean, they drill, and see the bullseye isn't what you're going for. You're going for triple 20s. Boom, boom, boom.
And never in a million years did I feel like I'd be winning money off guys shooting darts.
Oh, lucky you.
Yep. PlaySugarHouse.com. Playable in New Jersey only. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Oh, I might have one if I'm betting darts, right?
Well, that's the only thing that's on.
Michael Kaskey Blomain joins us. Update on the NBA. We heard on Friday that it looks pretty good. There is some concern among NBA owners that the fact that a 22-team return-to-play format would result in a number of small market teams not playing any games for 9 months or more. So, Michael, what is the thought of how this NBA season will look when it does, in fact, return, which they're saying at the end of July?
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. But unfortunately, no matter what they decide to do, there's not going to be any perfect solution. And while, obviously the small markets don't want to lose out on the money, they also have concerns about going back to action to play for, what amounts to basically meaningless games at this point in the season for all the teams that are, obviously already eliminated from playoff contention. Given that it's already, a tough time to play, all the different factors going on in terms of the virus and the safety of the players and logistical issues. So, they obviously they don't want to play games that they're just going to play that aren't going toward the postseason. So, there has to be some sort of compromise. Obviously, they were kicking around the idea of just bringing the 16 playoff teams that were already in the playoff positioning when the season was suspended. I think the 22-team number is kind of, a happy medium. They're obviously not bringing all 30, but they are expanding it to include teams beyond the teams that are just currently in playoff positioning, which should help, league-wide revenue. Obviously, 22 is better than 16 in terms of the amount of games and the teams. And, they'll probably have to go from there. But again, it's, there's no such thing as a perfect solution to this situation.
If they bring back teams based off of a certain amount of games back from the 8th seed, it seems like the Wizards would be the only team from the East compared to a couple of teams from the West. Do you think that will be a problem at all?
It's kind of weird, I guess, Brody, for the lack of a better word, on surface value to see, so many teams from one conference going in when there's only 9 from the East. But, if you actually take a step back and look at the standings and the way things are shaking out, you can see that, in the East, it's pretty much set in stone. The Wizards are 5.5 games back from the 8th seed. So even them, it's kind of a stretch to have a chance to make that spot. Where in the West, it's a little bit more compact, as is the case. There's 3 teams right outside of the playoff spot that are only 3.5 games back, meaning the Blazers, Pelicans, and Kings. And then the Spurs and the Suns are also, right in that clump. So, it's weird at face value, but if you actually look at the standings, it's more of the teams in there than rather just the 16 teams that they're working with now.
Now, I know Josh Harris is one of the owners who is enthusiastic about having as many teams as possible in a bubble environment. And, the Atlanta Hawks owner as well. He said, look, we want to play even if we don't have a path to the postseason. Are you concerned at all that this could be a sticking point, or one way or another, they're finishing this season out?
Yeah, I think one way or another, Mike, they're going to figure something out, because at the end of the day, the league would want the revenue sharing that comes with the teams that are playing, rather than, completely forfeiting the season. And that way you lose, all the potential money that would come in from the TV revenue and whatever other income you would get there. So I think ultimately it's an issue right now that is, they're going back and forth upon in terms of the number of teams, and that some of these, the smaller markets do want the opportunity to play. But if it came down to, holding out and fighting over this, or getting back to some semblance of play and allowing the league to finish off the season and crown a champion, and then try to, get back to some semblance of normalcy moving forward after this season, I think that's ultimately how it's going to come out. They're going to be voting later this week, obviously, and I think it's definitely looking like it's going to be, that 22-team format taking place in Orlando at the end of July.
Now, Michael, one of the reports that I read was that the Eastern Conference teams don't seem very enthusiastic about a 16-team seeding. They would rather just do East-West. Do we have any idea on what the playoff format might look like?
Not exactly, Mike. I do think that they're ultimately going to stick with the regular East-West format. I think that there's, like you said, there's a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference that don't want to see that format, changed for obvious reasons in terms of, the quality of, the teams and how many good teams are in the West. And there's so many other factors that they're trying to, juggle and balance and figure out the answers to logistically and other things at this point that I think keeping, some semblance of normalcy in terms of how the playoffs have been done in the past is kind of, I don't want to say a priority, but it's definitely something I think the league would like to do. It's how they've always been done. And there's already talk about this, whatever happens with this playoffs having an asterisk next to it, for lack of a better word, just because it's such a different situation. And I think the more you tinker with it, the more people are going to look at it as potentially, a different championship. Whereas if you keep the same formula that you've done in the past, there's at least that sense of normalcy. So I think, different things could happen, but I do think ultimately they'll just have the 1 through 8 in both conferences and go from there.
The one thing that I keep thinking about is if the NBA playoffs or the finals goes into the fall and the NFL returns and they plan to have fans in the stadium, is it possible to think that fans can be in Orlando at any point? I mean, it'll be weird to think the NBA finals is going on with no fans locked down in Orlando, but the NFL has full stadiums with all these people cheering.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brody. But from what I've heard, I don't think fans are in the mix for this NBA season at all. Again, that could change. But from the people I've talked to, I think the NBA is content with, finishing out the season in its entirety in Orlando all the way through to the finals and basically having that, the bubble term that they've been using for, being as tight as possible in terms of just the team people that need to be there and, the close family members of players and maybe selected media members. And that's about it. I think that they've come to that, they've accepted basically that they're taking a loss, obviously, in terms of all the ticket revenue and having people in the arena. So, it would be weird, like you said, to see preseason NFL games with fans and NBA Finals games without fans. But I think it's just the way that the timing was, and the league is trying to kind of be a leader in terms of getting back into action and provide the masses with the entertainment. And I think adding fans at that point is just another obstacle, another thing they have to figure out. And I think that they've, kind of accepted at this point that this season is a wash in terms of putting fans in the seats, and they're hopeful that, they can finish and crown a champion. And then once next season starts, they can get back to, the normalcy in terms of fans, even if the number's limited, they'll try to get back to the home arenas and getting the home fans back in the mix.
Michael Kaskey Blomain, CBS Sports, covers the Sixers and the NBA here on the Sports Bash, and we look at July 31st. I guess at that stage, if you're going to bring people back July 31st and play out the season, you're anticipating starting the next season after or around Christmas, correct?
Yeah, that's the plan.
So they would start at that point. My thought would be, is that the precursor of that being the new start date for the NBA? We'd heard it tossed around by the Hawks ownership group, Tony Ressler, who basically suggested, why are we competing with the NFL in October and November? We should start on Christmas and just move it to then. So do you think that this could actually be the start of a new NBA calendar?
I think they'll use it as a trial run, Mike. Absolutely. Like you said, it's something that's been tossed around before, and then this situation presented itself, and will give the league the opportunity to try it out for, due to the circumstances. I don't know if it's necessarily something that they'll immediately adapt after this season, because there is, they have the idea that they could get the schedule back on track if, say they start around Christmas and the next season runs through late July, and they kind of shift things back toward the normal schedule. It would take a season or two, but they're thinking by, a year or two down the road, the schedule could potentially be back on track in terms of what it's been recently. But if, they start at Christmas and they like the way the schedule, shakes out, the way the ratings work compared to, like you said, not having to compete directly with the beginning, tough part of the NFL season, if they think that it works out, then perhaps they'll, keep it moving forward. But I think definitely it's going to be kind of a trial run, trial and error, and then they're going to go from there. No decisions at this point have been made,
Right.
and set in stone. Everything is just kind of still up in the air, obviously.
At the Real Mike KB on Twitter. Give him a follow there to keep up on the NBA news. July 31st. We're still got 2 months to go potentially until we see basketball. So the ramp up period would be about 3 weeks, you think? Training camps and then some sort of regular season play-in type of tournament. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, that's what it sounded like, Mike. The training camp period would start for, like you said, a period of probably 2 to 3 weeks. Some amount of regular season games between 5 and 10 is, how I've heard it described. And then, depending on what they do to determine the final playoff spots, whether it's a play-in tournament or whatever, once they hit the actual postseason, they want that to be, as normal as possible in terms of 7-game series all the way through, like it has been in the past.
All right, we'll keep our eye on the NBA. We see baseball with a new proposal. Hockey should be back soon. Hopefully everything just comes back at the same time and we have sports euphoria this summer and fall. Michael Kaskey Blomain at the Real Mike KB. Thanks, pal.
That would be nice, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. Great talking to you.
Absolutely. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And, of course, Michael will be with us all NBA playoffs.